You're watching Champ Week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods.
Didn't we talk about that in August? We said 2 hours of what? 2 hours of work for 60 years of memories. Talked about that the entire time, didn't we? We've had our ups, we've had our downs. Why would you guys get rewarded right now for all the hard work you put in? Okay, so you go out and you concentrate. Don't look left, don't look right, just what? Play. If something goes wrong, get your teammates together, we huddle up and get through it. Does everybody understand that? Yeah, let's go out there and have a rock.
It's yours. Nobody else but yours. So when we come in here, we have no regrets, no what ifs, no I should. All we want to be talking about, we got it done. All right? Yes, sir. So let's go.
And with that, we welcome you to Dunk City, Alico Arena in Fort Myers, Florida for the Atlantic Sun Championship. Number 7 seed Stetson, number 4 seed Florida Gulf Coast. Part of Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Here's what the bracket looks like. It's been an upset-ridden tournament. And now we have 2 teams on the floor to decide a title, but 3 with something on the line. We'll explain that in a moment. Welcome courtside, everybody. Tom Hart alongside Corey Alexander. It's simple enough for Florida Gulf Coast. They win this game, they're back dancing for the second time in the last 4 seasons. But Stetson is ineligible for the NCAA tournament. If they win this game, then North Florida, the regular season champ, will represent the Atlantic Sun. But Corey, don't mistake that for meaning that there's not anything on the line for Stetson tonight.
There's a tremendous amount for Stetson to play for tonight because their coach, Corey Williams, took this job 3 years ago with the intention of hanging some banners in the Edmond Center in DeLand, Florida. And this is their first chance in a rebuilding situation for them to be able to hang a banner in their home gym.
These 2 teams met just a week ago. Stetson pulled off the upset victory. And so the Hatters come in tonight looking for just their 13th win of the season under Corey Williams, who played in the NCAA tournament for Eddie Sutton in Oklahoma State back in the early 90s. Tremendous home court advantage here at the Eagles' Nest. Florida Gulf Coast is looking for its 20th win of the season. They've had a consistent starting lineup all year. They featured Mark Eddie Norelia, who's got a school record 14 double-doubles at the 4 spot. And Stetson counters with the A-Sun Freshman of the Year, Derek Newton, opposite Norelia.
And that should be a great matchup because those 2 guys will spend a lot of time guarding each other and trying to find different advantages the way they can be successful in this game.
Stetson coming off of a blowout win on the road against Lipscomb. Florida Gulf Coast the same up in Jacksonville against North Florida. Florida Gulf Coast in the home white, the Stetson Hatters in the road green. Norelia gets it back, pushed out by Peg. And a fadeaway left-hander falls off the rim, but a rebound for Florida Gulf Coast.
And one of the things you see early for Florida Gulf Coast, they feel like they are the one team in the A-Sun that has an advantage on the interior, and they're going to exploit it early.
Dunk City indeed. Morant gets us started. Stetson can play up-tempo. The average better than 80 points a game. Second most in this up-tempo league, the Atlantic Sun.
And you mentioned the up-tempo league. The majority of this league relies on their perimeter players. And Stetson is one of those teams where the three-pointer is a very vital part of what they do on offense.
But Grant Lazoya's been in a slump, and he misses his first attempt. Quick look and a quick move. Norelia with the reverse.
We mentioned the interior presence of Florida Gulf Coast. They want to make sure that they play inside out, give their interior players the opportunity to touch the basketball before they freely start firing away jump shots.
Off the screen, Harvey gives it right back to Derek Newton, one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And now Brian Pegg creates some space, an offensive foul, and they can't afford for Pegg, the junior from Clearwater, to be in foul trouble.
But Tom, this is my second time here in a championship game atmosphere, and one of the things that you have to be wary of, you can rarely hear the whistle. It's so exciting in here as we see the offensive foul from Pegg. But oftentimes, you guys will keep playing because you can't even hear the whistle. It gets so loud in the Alico Arena.
It's another sellout here in Dunk City. Julian DeBose gets it to Norelia. Demetrius Morant tries to go baseline. And he converts. Perfect start for Florida Gulf Coast. The one shot that they missed, they were able to pull out an offensive rebound.
And every possession is the true post players touching the basketball.
Near turnover. Newton comes out of there with it. Into Peg, but before that, Demetrius Morant with a hold and his first personal foul. Stetson, led by Corey Williams, their head coach, is in his 3rd season, but he took over late a couple of Junes ago as Morant takes a seat. And he's still building this program. It's a team without any seniors on it. And so while they're not eligible for the NCAA tournament this year, they are indeed next year. Peg misses from point-blank range. Another bucket. Mark Eddie Norelia's got 4.
And 4 straight possessions for Florida Gulf Coast. They have gone inside. Joe Dooley wants to make sure that his team understands how they need to play. And now an easy opportunity for Johnson on the break.
Timeout Stetson. The Eagles nest alive here in Dunk City. Well, it's been nicknamed Dunk City, and for good reason, but this Florida Gulf Coast team isn't supposed to be a high-riser like teams of the past.
Well, some of it has to do with defense city, but defense into offense, and Zach Johnson way above the rim for a finish.
It's funny, Joe Dooley took over after Andy Enfeld left for Southern California, and he tried to change the tempo that they play at. He wanted to put more of an emphasis on taking care of the basketball and a little bit more half court.
And it was a difficult task to do because he had 2 great guards in Brett Comer and Bernard Thompson, who go down as number 1 and 2 in Florida Gulf Coast history scoring. But now he has his full complement of players, and there's much more of a defensive focus for the Eagles.
First bucket for Stetson comes from their point guard, Divine Miles. If you're worried about Stetson being in a hole, don't be, as Simmons fails to convert. In a matchup a week ago, they fell behind Florida Gulf Coast 26-4. They ended up winning that game by 7. Rivera finds Peg all alone.
That was a beautiful pass by Rivera. More importantly, Peg kept his eyes on the point guard. Instead of assuming a shot was going up, he was able to catch and get an easy bucket, and that's what Rivera does. 9 assists last time out. I'm sorry, 10 assists against Lipscomb in his last game out with 9 points to match.
So Angel Rivera and Divine Miles, 2 point guards on the floor right now for Stetson. Left all alone. It's a 3 mark. Consecutive misses for Florida Gulf Coast for the first time tonight. Rivera into the paint, has it blocked, rejected by Antravius Simmons. Norelia backing down his man, fading hook with the left. He's got a half dozen.
Right now, Corey Williams choosing to guard Norelia on the post solo. However, at some point, there's probably going to have to be a double team, almost a turnover as Goodman was tying his shoes.
Hadn't finished taking the bunny around the tree. Here's Peg inside. Hands it off to Rivera. I know that's how you learned it, Corey. And Rivera, in the land of giants at just 5'8", gets his first bucket.
But Rivera, big on heart, and you see he has no problem attacking the basket. And when he comes into the game, Miles actually moves over to the shooting guard position. Those 2 guys play a lot together, and both 2 consecutive years with over 100 assists.
And we've got a turnover on Stetson. So their defense leading to offense here early on.
Oh, both sides of the floor getting the job done. And this time it's Rivera coming up. He's not able to score and gets blocked on that possession. And Norelia taking it to the rim strong to give his team a 6-point lead.
In 2013, Andy Enfield's Florida Gulf Coast team made a run to the Sweet 16, the first 15 seed ever to make it there. They eventually lost to 3 seed Florida.
And one of the coaches paying special attention to that was Corey Williams, now the head coach at Stetson, he and Andy Enfield coached together at Florida State under Leonard Hamilton for a number of years. So that had a part to do. Now, that was during Corey Williams' first year. I'm sorry, he was still at Florida State at that time, watching Andy Enfield come up and have success, and then ends up taking the job at Stetson. I'm sure he would love to have similar success in DeLand, Florida.
You were just with Leonard Hamilton yesterday in Tallahassee. I understand he's keeping a close eye on what Stetson's been doing.
He is. He actually missed his radio show on Thursday night trying to keep up with the Stetson game and watching Corey. Called Corey immediately after the game, making sure he knew how to prepare for the championship game.
Devon Miles into the paint. Follows his own miss. And Stetson, with consecutive offensive rebounds, can reset. They're a team that likes to push it.
The Florida Gulf Coast leads the A-Sun in rebounding. However, Stetson has out-rebounded his last 3 opponents, including Florida Gulf Coast, in their last meeting.
Kevin Nahiro loses that one. And a turnover for Stetson, down 6 here against a 4-seed Florida Gulf Coast. Remember, Stetson ineligible for the NCAA tournament due to an APR rules violation. They missed the qualifying score by just 1 point. The conference changed the bylaws a couple of years ago, allowing for ineligible teams to participate in the conference tournament, with the understanding that the regular season champ would then go if an ineligible team won it. I think, personally, it's a fantastic rule because you're giving kids a chance to play the game, and this Stetson team under Corey Williams a chance to win a title.
I agree, and I give the Atlantic Sun a lot of credit because each conference makes their own rules regarding automatic qualifiers and how they would go about approaching it. We had an opportunity to speak with the commissioner of the Atlantic Sun today, and you know, I agree exactly what you're saying. I think it's a great opportunity for these players from Stetson to be able to go out and compete in the conference tournament, and they do have a lot on the line here.
Demetrius Morant with his second personal foul. And look at it this way. If you say, well, it's unfair to Florida Gulf Coast, they have a chance to go. All they have to do is win the game today. And by the way, win it against a 7 seed. And they're going back to the NCAA tournament.
And win it on their home court. So when you look at that, if you're Florida Gulf Coast, they have it. They basically are in control of their own destiny. However, I was here 2 years ago and watched Mercer come in and win the conference tournament here on Florida Gulf Coast home floor. So nothing is a given, especially when we get to March.
Mercer would go on to upset Duke in the first round in a 14-3 game. It'll stick with Stetson here, down 6. After a slow start, Florida Gulf Coast led this game 10-0, but Stetson has scored 6 of the last 8.
And one of the reasons why Stetson's been able to get back into this, Angel Rivera stepping into the game. He's very aggressive in the way that he attacks the basket.
There's Luke Doyle, a sniper off the bench, and he hits a rare 2. He had 18 in the last matchup with these teams. He hit 6 threes against Florida Gulf Coast.
And Luke Doyle plays starter minutes, but Corey Williams likes him coming off of the bench. And what he's been able to give his team, that spark, especially when they have times where they don't get off to great offensive starts, but having a guy like that to be able to come in and give you some juice off the bench.
And Travius Simmons can't hit the 15-footer. Brought down by Stetson. Chance to make it a one-possession game. Devon Miles full throttle, finds Doyle. Transition 3. Got it! Back-to-back buckets for Luke Doyle. And a school record now 71 threes on the season.
And according to Corey Williams, earlier in the season, getting down 10-0, his team would have folded. But now this team feels like, and they believe they can win anywhere. They've won their 2 Atlantic Sun Championship tournament games on the road, and they believe they can win here today.
They're a well-traveled team. From Newark to Nashville to Dunk City. Reed off the mark. Rebounded by Simmons, back up strong. Wow, tough shot for Leo Goodman off the bench.
Goodman as well as Doyle, they have a scoring impact when they come into the game. And you look at Goodman, he's a back-to-basket player, but a very good shooter. Gives them a different dimension than even Derek Newton does coming off the bench.
Simmons again inside. Knocked away, and Doyle comes out with it. Good transition defense by Florida Gulf Coast. And Stetson will have to set things up. Devon Miles trying to break down his man. Little too strong. working against freshman Rajon Tucker. But a three, again, a school record for threes this season for Stetson. Goodman and Doyle off the bench, throwing them in from deep.
And what a luxury it is for Corey Williams to have two players that can come off the bench and be snipers. You've got Doyle knocking down 1-3 as his team now has claimed the lead.
7-seed Stetson with its first lead of the game over 4-seed Florida Gulf Coast, nearly midway through the first half here in Fort Myers. Sunday at 11:30 on ESPN, it's a championship game of the men's West Coast Conference Tournament between the winner of 2-seed Gonzaga and 3-seed BYU against the winner of 1-seed St. Mary's and 4-seed Pepperdine. The men's West Coast Conference Championship, part of Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Also streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Mark Few's squad lost another big man to injury this week in Vegas. And they may have to win that whole thing to continue their tournament run.
And they have a tough task ahead, taking on BYU. Kyle Collinsworth, the NCAA record holder in triple doubles. And they have an exciting offense. Going to be a great matchup between those two teams.
Florida Gulf Coast has had a ton of success inside. Norelia's got 8 now.
And Norelia continues to have success on the interior, but the ability of Stetson to shoot the three is the equalizer in this game. The reason they're able to be in a tied situation right now, but they're going to have to continue to make them against this tough Florida Gulf Coast defense.
Stetson has hit 2 from behind the arc. They trailed 10-0, but fought their way back. And on the Miles drive, a check and a foul on Zach Johnson. His first. That's the team's team's fourth. 16-6 run for Stetson.
And that 16-6 run really has been done without the ASUN Rookie of the Year, Derek Newton, who's actually averaging 26 points per game during the conference tournament, as well as Brian Pegg, who's had tremendous success.
Newton not even on the floor right now. Miles can't finish. Eagles the other way. So what's the answer for Stetson defensively against the post players?
Double team. At some point, Corey Williams is going to have to go with the trap, but often coaches will take their time and make those adjustments at halftime to not give opposing coaches an opportunity to adjust as well.
Doyle again. He got it again. Another transition 3 for Luke Doyle.
And I can tell you right now, Corey Williams would be happy to trade 2s for 3s. If his team is able to continue to shoot the basketball this well, especially if they're not even playing on their home court, he won't go with the double team. He'll make sure that they continue to try to throw the ball inside.
That play kicked off by a Luke Nahiro block. Goodman trying to D up. And Simmons hauls it in and draws the foul. 2 little guys were stuck underneath for Stetson that time, and it'll be the first on Angel Rivera.
And this is a mismatch on the glass. If you've got Rivera having to guard Simmons, this is what's going to happen. Only adding a free throw, giving Simmons an opportunity for the 3-point play. As tough as Rivera is, that's not his strength, getting in there and boxing out Simmons and rebounding with the big fella.
Especially considering Antravius Simmons, who's now listed at 6'9", 250, against Rivera 5'8", 165. But Simmons was an offensive lineman in high school. He originally went to VCU to play for Shaka Smart. When he showed up in Richmond to play for Shaka, he weighed over 300 pounds. Havoc dropped a lot of those LBs.
I'm sure they did, but he didn't get much time playing in Havoc, weighing 300. It's a different system to be able to play in, but he's found a home here in Fort Myers.
Pegg and Newton back on the floor. They work together to get Brian Pegg's second field goal.
And Pegg has had success. It was behind him that they were able to get back into the game, as you mentioned, after being down 24-6.
Simmons on the feet, another up-close look, and he's got 7.
We mentioned that game, the prior game these two teams played at the end of the regular season. Stetson was able to win that game after being down huge. And that was kind of what has ignited this run for Stetson that's gotten them here to the Atlantic Sun Championship.
It was a 25-point swing in that game. Stetson originally down 26-4. Pegg in that game scored 8 consecutive points to kind of kickstart that run, and he had a big 3 to start the second half. High-low again. And that'll be offensive.
And that was
Simmons picks up his second.
Extremely smart play by Brian Pegg. He actually picked up an offensive foul on that same type of possession in the first half. But this time, Pegg one of the very few upperclassmen on this Stetson team, does a great job anticipating what is going to happen, gets his body in the way, and draws the offensive foul.
Joe Dooley, the head coach for Florida Gulf Coast, longtime Bill Self assistant. He likened following Andy Enfield here at Florida Gulf Coast to what he and Bill Self and that staff faced when they followed Roy Williams at Kansas. He said, listen, we're going to do things differently, but that didn't mean there wasn't a lot of talent there already, and they hadn't been winning before.
And they have changed the philosophy a bit, more of a defensive stance, but right now they're having a difficult time guarding Stetson, and Derek Newton gets his first bucket. And if he gets going, watch out, be one of the most exciting freshmen to watch in the country.
The team's over 50% from the floor. Aurelio wants it back at the high post. He had 29 in the last matchup with these teams. He's got 8 already tonight. Shot clock at 5. Stripped by Rivera. Shot clock at 2. And a jump ball. With 1 second on the shot clock. We step away for a timeout here at Fort Myers. 2-point game. Doyle has set a new Stetson single-season record for threes. He's got 2 tonight, and his distance shooting has pushed Stetson to the lead.
And not only pushed him to the lead, he was the one that actually got him playing in this game. It was 10-0 before Luke Doyle was able to get on the floor. But since he's been on the court, his team has actually outscored Florida Gulf Coast 23-11.
Pretty good plus-minus for Doyle. Representing 8 of the 15 bench points already for Stetson tonight. Philip Svetnichian has entered the game for Florida Gulf Coast. He's the only remaining player from their Sweet 16 run a few years ago. Divine Miles hits inside.
And when you watch this Stetson team, it's so difficult to believe that they only had 10 wins during the regular season. The way that they're playing right now and the confidence that they're playing with, it only makes you imagine, hey, if this team is able to go on and win, could they do some damage in the NCAA tournament if they were able to get in?
It's a question that will go unanswered, but isn't that the beauty of the postseason and the beauty of being eligible for postseason tournaments? Anybody has a chance to win it.
And more importantly, if you're Corey Williams and you look at your team, and in this conference, you want to be playing your best basketball right now. The Atlantic Sun primarily has been a one-team bid into the NCAA tournament, so it's about the coaches who can get their teams to play on the upswing all year long and be playing their best basketball in March.
Brian Pegg has to sit, picks up his second with 7:14 left in the first half.
He actually picked up 2 fouls early against Lipscomb. Only played 14 minutes in that game. Still went for 22 and 12.
He got 12 shots off in 14 minutes. It's Corey Alexander like, I love it. Morant's got a half dozen now. Florida Gulf Coast getting 14 points from their post players.
That might have been as easy as it gets. When Morant shot that jump hook, he had to throw it down to the basket. His arm was about 2 feet over top of the rim.
Corey, Derek Newton only has 1 bucket so far. And it's stripped away, but Miles gets it right back. Newton will drive, and he's able to draw the foul. That's on Morant, and that's Morant's 3rd.
That was a very smart play by Derek Newton. A very good three-point shooter, but instead of forcing the 3, does a great job putting the ball on the floor and challenging Morant. As you mentioned, that 3rd foul, and that's a big difference for Florida Gulf Coast. They actually lost 4 straight games during a stretch of 7 games. Morant had to sit out with injury. They're not the same defensive team without him on the floor.
Derek Newton at the free throw line. He set a school record for points as a freshman at Stetson. It's the most points for any Hatter since 1996. And there was a guy playing here at that time that you know well.
Absolutely, my man Jason Alexander, who formerly Jason Gilliam, who was my backcourt partner at Oak Hill. I had to text him to make sure he knew I was doing this game and show him that his name is all over the game notes for putting up buckets.
I thought that was really neat of him, the way he looks up to you to change his name to be more like you.
I thought so. Well, you know, they say that, you know, imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yes,
you know, I'm sure he's at home cracking up right now having to hear that.
Florida Gulf Coast trails by 3. Their only route to the NCAA tournament is a win here tonight in the championship game of the Atlantic Sun tournament. And Travius Simmons, jump hook. And a key rebound inside with Grant Lazoya. Lazoya missed his first field goal attempt. He's not having a great year shooting the ball. He's got to do some of that little stuff right for Stetson, too. Newton powers in. He was blocked from behind, but a foul before that. Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. It's a championship game of the Women's American Conference Tournament between number 1 seed UConn and the winner between 2 seed USF and 3 seed Temple. The Women's AAC Championship, part of Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Also streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app.
And I hate to be disrespectful, and I mean this with the least amount of disrespect. They may as well not even play that championship game. Because I'm telling you right now, nobody's beating UConn. And when they beat South Carolina, the way they beat South Carolina, at that point, nobody's even in their league.
They haven't been for a while. 11 straight 30-win seasons. Derek Newton hits the second. It's a 4-point Stetson lead. Kevin Mickle has entered the game for Florida Gulf Coast. They go right to the block again. And a trip to the free throw line coming. Kevin Nehiro commits his first personal.
And when you watch this Florida Gulf Coast team, you can count on one hand how many times they've actually taken a jump shot, shots outside of the paint. Joe Dooley is set on making sure they attack in the post, and they had a lot of success early, but give Stetson tremendous credit for the way they've adjusted defensively. They still haven't brought a double team. However, their guys have manned up on the block. With Peg on the bench, the hero has come in and done a tremendous job defensively.
Another free throw coming for Demetrius Morant. Joe Dooley was part of an NCAA championship team as an assistant coach to Bill Self at Kansas. He's got some guys with some postseason experience. Pardon me, as Norelia hits his second free throw, including Demetrius Morant, who played in the NCAA tournament while he was at UNLV. A lot of transfers on the floor for this Florida Gulf Coast program.
And that's really been the difference in what they've been able to do compared to Stetson. Stetson not getting many transfers to this point, but the way Corey Williams is going and what they've been able to do here, this is a large recruiting tool for the green and white.
Great defense by Florida Gulf Coast. Up front, Terrell takes it all the way in, and he draws a foul on Lozoya. Little emotion in the building tonight.
Well, it's a championship game. Emotions are high. And Terrell going to the rim. Lozoya trying to make the block. Just a little face-off. Nothing more than that. Just, hey, big fella, I got to let you know I'm around.
Took a shot to the face. And Lozoya a little banged up himself. So Christian Terrell to the free throw line. High school teammate of Duke's Grayson Allen. Lost at home to North Carolina last night. That was the first win in Cameron Indoor for the North Carolina seniors, and they were in the ACC outright. Terrell hits them both, and Florida Gulf Coast is going to show a little bit of pressure. What's the point of the pressure here?
Well, the point of the pressure is simply to slow down the running attack of Stetson and make them have to think about when they get the basketball, they're not just going to have free runs down the floor. They have to be aware and find their defenders early.
It's been a very deliberate attack for Stetson tonight. Average time of possession 20 seconds, which is 4 seconds slower than their season average. And a shot to the head and another foul on Florida Gulf Coast.
The hero really starting to up his production, and he's given Corey Williams a reliable backup to Brian Pegg. When Pegg gets in foul trouble, there was a drop-off before, with now with the hero getting the opportunities to play, and especially what he does on the defensive end of the floor, he's been a large bonus for Corey Williams' group.
It's the first personal foul on Kevin Mickle, the 8th team foul on Florida Gulf Coast. Kevin Nehiro from Ottawa, Ontario, played his high school ball in Kentucky at Thomas Nelson High School. Well, they love the jump hook here, don't they?
Well, they love to go inside, just unable to finish. And the offensive production on the block has slowed down for Florida Gulf Coast.
Newton shakes Mickle, but gets cut off. Beautiful look inside. All alone is Grant Lozoya. And an assist to Rivera.
Another beautiful feed by Rivera, and that's an important basket for Lozoya. Has been, as you mentioned, been struggling offensively, but that when you're a shooter, you get an easy layup like that. it adds a fire to your game. You see he's now stepping out defensively, taking the challenge of guarding Terrell.
Morelia showing a little bit of range.
Mark-Eddie Morelia continues to play very well and has an opportunity today to become the first Florida Gulf Coast player to ever have 4 straight double-doubles, and the points are not going to be a problem because he's gotten off to a great start offensively.
He has 12 here early. Lazoya playing with some confidence, but pushed off to get free. It's a second on Grant Lazoya. We're tied at 29. This back-and-forth affair.
And it's back-and-forth points in the paint. Lazoya with the beautiful feed from Rivera lays it in. But Morelia continues to operate on the block in this tie game.
Well, here's what's on the line tonight for both teams. The hardware that goes to the tournament champion. But this tournament a little bit different than most because of Stetson's ineligibility. If Stetson wins this game, then North Florida, the regular season champ, will have earned its way into the NCAA tournament. If Florida Gulf Coast is able to win tonight, it'll be their second NCAA appearance in school history, trying to rehash what they did in 2013 on their way to the Sweet 16. Now, the APR violations for Stetson came about for a variety of reasons, but the bottom line is when Corey Williams took over this program, there were already some departures, even more players left when he took over. Not all of them left in great academic standing, even though they did well once they went on. And so Stetson missed qualification by just 1 point.
It wasn't an academic issue, it was a retention issue. And by those young men leaving at the point of the season or point of the school year in which they did, when the NCAA came back in and recalculated the numbers for the APR, as you mentioned, they missed it by 1 point. And that's part of the reason why the Atlantic Sun gave them a partial relief and allowed them to play in this A-Sun tournament in comparison to them not being able to play in any postseason basketball at all.
Corey Williams, longtime assistant at both Florida State and Oral Roberts, played 2 years in the NBA with the Bulls with a guy by the name of Michael Jordan back in the day.
And won a championship in '93, the year before Michael retired. Corey was on that team. Also spent some time with Bill Self, so he and Joe Dooley have that in common.
Derek Newton has 4 points tonight. Only 1 made field goal. Shot clock in single digits again. And another turnover taken away by Julian DeBose. Taken right back by Doyle. Newton on the other end. Able to bank it in.
And that was a great play by Newton, and not trying to make a highlight play and throw the lob to Nahiro, but by taking it on his own and finishing. Nahiro at this point of his career, not really that polished offensively. And it was more important for Newton to get that to the rim and get an easy basket.
Florida Gulf Coast looking inside again. An offensive foul on the drive by Christian Terrell. That's his first personal. Plenty coming your way at the half. Chris Conner and Andy Katz will be by. Look at who's punching tickets. They have Joey Brackett's last 4 out. And Peyton Manning has wrapped it up. He'll ride into the sunset with a Super Bowl under his belt. Hey, some drama in Missouri Valley today, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. It's always drama in the Missouri Valley. But in my opinion, Peyton Manning, best quarterback of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
With a Tom Brady fan or two in the truck.
Yeah, well, we got some Boston guys around, and I made sure I said that so that therefore they can hear it. Red Sox in training camp here.
That's right.
You know, make sure everyone can hear it. Peyton Manning.
Kevin Mickle commits his second personal foul. And the injured player for Florida Gulf Coast is Zach Johnson.
Actually, I think that's Julian DeBose that's down right now, grasping that lower leg. And the 5th-year senior at Florida Gulf Coast, the only returning starter for this Joe Dooley's team this year.
And DeBose helped back into the Florida Gulf Coast locker room immediately.
And hopefully we see him back on the court. But you look at that left ankle turn, and that's painful. No question about it. Tough young man from Washington, D.C., St. John's College Prep. And I know this is a game that he does not want to miss any time in. Hopefully we get a chance to see him back on the court.
Another free throw coming for Derek Newton. He's got 8 now after a slow start. 2 minutes to go before the half.
Isn't that amazing? We're talking about a freshman a slow start. He has 8 points in the first half, and when you put it up an average of 26 points in 2 straight tournament games, those are the type of expectations that come to you.
And now Newton whistled for the foul. I did some quick math in that last timeout, Corey. Of the 23 field goal attempts for Florida Gulf Coast thus far today, 18 of them have come from their bigs.
And that's the way they play. They're in the top 5 nationally in 2-point field goals. 61% of their points come off of 2-point field goals. In this game, in today's age of 3-point happy shooting, Joe Dooley playing somewhat an old school style of basketball here in Fort Myers.
Aurelia misses the front end of the 1-and-1. Joe Dooley 2 years ago, regular season champs. You were here for that Mercer game. They've had some tough losses here at home, and they were the favorites. They went to the NIT that year. Ended up losing in the first round.
They lost to North Florida in the semifinals, but avenged that loss on Thursday and held North Florida 30 points under their season average.
One of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country up in Jacksonville. Three's off the mark, but a foul on the rebound as Rivera went down hard. Phillips teaching and missed the 3.
I was wondering if you were going to try that. You got it down pretty good, too.
I've been practicing all day. You were at the pool and enjoying a drink with an umbrella in it. I was back working on my pronunciations.
Did you have your spies on me? Is that what happened?
Yeah. We're always watching. Marquetti Aurelia with his first personal foul. And Angel Rivera, the sophomore from Puerto Rico, to the free throw line. And he rolls it home.
And Rivera, although he doesn't start, when he comes in the game, he normally doesn't leave. He's actually had a 39-minute game coming off the bench. I'm not sure how you do that. But it's happened. Actually, it was an overtime game. He got all those minutes, but he's a guy that Corey Williams relies on heavily. And when he comes into the game, Miles moves over to the 2-guard position, but both of those guys, 2 consecutive years of over 100 assists.
Petichinen gives it up to Mickle, and it's swatted away, stolen by Derek Newton. Shares the ball, and it falls off the rim. And a hold on the breakaway, and that'll be the second personal foul on Luke Doyle. Corey Williams fired up. He wants that banner. He said the hardest thing he had to do all season and as a head coach was call his team into his office before practices begin and explain to them they would not be playing for an NCAA tournament berth.
And that's an uphill battle. When you have to do that in October, and now you have to go out and coach a full season with a team that's not really seeing a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that is a difficult task. And I'm sure it took a mental hit to his team early, especially when the way they were going about playing defense, they weren't very engaged. But as the end of the season has neared, they have continued to play better and better each time out.
Reggie Reed makes the first of now 2 as Corey Williams grabs his seat. You said they weren't very engaged on the defensive end. Is that how you describe it? You are a spin master.
Corey is my boy. We share a same name. However, he has an E and I do not. So therefore, I'm going to make it sound as positive as possible.
They were disinterested in playing defense. A little pushing and shoving after. Goodman got tangled up. Newton going to work. And the loose ball ends up in the hands of Miles and Stetson. Back to Rivera.
A great decision by Rivera to bring it back out. He wanted to be aggressive. And also he did have Corey Williams screaming from the sideline, but still too early. If they're going to hold it, it's not the time to go yet.
Almost a 3-second difference in the shot clock and game clock. Rivera floats it outside. Shot clock at 2. Knocked out of bounds by Florida Gulf Coast, and with 1.8 left on the clock, Stetson could draw something up.
And Corey Williams, I'm not sure if he has his usual losing timeout. Actually, he took that early in the 10-0 run, so he doesn't have it.
They got Doyle on the floor, the sniper. He's hit a couple of big threes here in the first half. Doyle off the inbounds. Hesitates, fires. Couldn't find it. Well, this was a fun one through the first half and still a half to go. Guys off the bench playing a key role for both sides. Stetson outscoring Florida Gulf Coast with the reserves 17, including 8 from Luke Doyle. Our halftime score here in Dunk City: Stetson 35, Florida Gulf Coast 30. After the break, Chris Connor and Andy Katz will bring you the Volkswagen halftime report. You're watching Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. "20 minutes to decide the Atlantic Sun champions. Stetson a half away from hanging a banner. Florida Gulf Coast needs to come back to get back to the big dance." Welcome back courtside. Tom Hart alongside Corey Alexander. What does Florida Gulf Coast need to do to pull out a win tonight?
They've got to find a way to slow down the bench production of Stetson. Doyle as well as Goodman came off the bench, really got it loaded after being down 10-0. Those guys stepped into the game and gave Stetson a huge lift.
Stetson's been able to do it with those bench players, and Doyle specifically finding their range from behind the arc.
And Stetson only with 3 3-pointers in the first half, but they both come from their reserves. Doyle with 2, Goodman knocking down 1. And for Florida Gulf Coast, it's been the interior presence. Norelia has had his way 12 points earlier, as well as Morant getting involved in the mix. These two guys combined are 8 for 11 from the field, but they're going to have to get something from their exterior players if they want to be able to win this game.
You see the domination inside between Norelia and Morant, but Morant had to sit for the last 6.5 minutes after picking up his 3rd foul. 75% of Florida Gulf Coast's field goal attempts in the first half came from post players inside the paint. By the way, there's an interested third party watching this game from about 300 miles away up in Jacksonville. North Florida will go to the NCAA tournament as the regular season A-Sun champs if Stetson can hold on for another 20 minutes of game time.
And you say the interested party, well, not all of them are actually watching. Coach Matt Driscoll let me know he was going dark at 6:59, did not want to see the game.
Terrell strokes a 3 to start the half for Florida Gulf Coast.
And we talked about Florida Gulf Coast needing some production from its perimeter players. First possession, Terrell stepping up, knocking down the 3, and now they're playing in the manner that they're going to have to if they want to beat this Stetson team.
Here's Brian Pegg working on Morant, who's got 3 fouls. Morant able to redirect it. It'll stay with Stetson. Now 5 seconds on the shot clock.
And the length of Morant inside the post is such a challenge for Pegg. Pegg likes to move around and maneuver in small spaces, but Morant can make up so much ground and block shots from distance with those long wingspan.
Lozoya's struggles from deep continue. They bring a double out. Norelia spins his way out of it, and it was a tough fall on the side from Lozoya trying to chase down that loose ball.
And kind of just as I expected, Corey Williams waiting until the second half to bring the trap because he did not want Joe Dooley to have an opportunity to go in and prepare his guys for the trap coming to the post during halftime. But Dooley did work on it earlier, so he was expecting the trap on the post presence. And this time Morant able to finish the post presence for Florida Gulf Coast. Both of these guys are capable of putting the ball in the basket around the rim.
Morant and Norelia have combined for 21 of Florida Gulf Coast 35. Shot clock will get to single digits on Stetson again, not the tempo they wanted to play at. Lozoya for 2. Good slip, but unable to finish inside was Christian Terrell.
And a great rebound by Pegg. And a good box out as well. Pegg leads the Atlantic Sun in rebounds at 10 per game. And he's got his hands full trying to keep this front line of Florida Gulf Coast off the boards, off their offensive glass, but does a great job on that possession and gets his team out in the transition offense.
Reggie Reed commits his first personal foul.
Reed getting the second half start. Julian DeVoe still in the locker room, nursing the ankle. Listed as doubtful for the remainder of this game.
How about Marquetti Norelia? Transfer from Tulane.
Well, he's had his way offensively. And now a tie basketball game. Will those twos be enough, or can Stetson continue to mount up three-pointers to put pressure on Florida Gulf Coast defense?
A two from Newton, the reigning ASUN Freshman of the Year. He had 25 and 13 in the semifinal win against Lipscomb.
And that's the area where Newton actually is improving. Imagine how difficult the cover he's going to be as he continues to get better playing with his back to the basket, because he does the majority of his work as a face-up four right now.
Johnson goes baseline and got a bump and a foul from Cameron Harvey. It's Harvey's first. Derek Newton, freshman from Beverly Hills, California.
And Newton playing with his back to the basket, making the move to the rim. And that's really not the strong point of his game. He is an unbelievable three-point shooter, very good perimeter player. But as he continues to develop that into his game, he's got ASUN Player of the Year written all over him for years to come.
There's not a single senior on this Stetson team. So while they are ineligible for the NCAA tournament this year, Corey Williams has to be thrilled with the way they've finished this season. Not only have they won their last three, but they had a 6-game losing streak late in the season that featured 2 losses by 2 points, another by 3, another by 4, and 2 losses in overtime. He said, we were right there. We were right there in every single game. We just couldn't find a way to push over that edge and get the win. And so you wonder, 20 minutes away from an ASUN championship, if they'll know how to win this one tonight.
With a young team, it's very difficult to learn how to win, but the one thing I feel like they've done over their last 3 games is expose that. And they were able to do it against Florida Gulf Coast at home. We mentioned down 24-6 in the first half, come back and turn that around, a 25-point swing to win that game. Ever since then, everything has been a blowout. So that's one of the things we have to question if they find themselves in a tight game, as Azoria gets an easy layup off the underneath end of bound.
It came following the 4th personal foul for Demetrius Morant. Their starting post player will have to sit.
And one thing for certain, this Florida Gulf Coast team is not as good defensively without Morant on the floor protecting the rim.
And Travius Simmons, who spells him inside, has shown that he's been a capable scorer. He's got 9 already, 2 more than his season average. Looking for Pegg. Brian Pegg got bounced around inside, found Harvey. And Reggie Reed comes out of there with it. Morelia inside. Follows his own miss. And he'll get pegged for the foul. It'll be his 3rd. Foul trouble piling up for key players on both sides. A 2-point game in Dunk City. Sunday at 11:30 on ESPN. It's a championship game of the men's West Coast Conference tournament between the winner of 2-seed Gonzaga and 3-seed BYU against the winner of 1-seed St. Mary's and 4-seed Pepperdine. The men's West Coast Conference championship, part of Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Also streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Marquetti Norelia from Port-au-Prince, Haiti at the free throw line. He hits the first. He started his college career at Tulane, where he played 16 minutes a game. Came to the United States to Orlando from Haiti, where his dad is a welder and his mom sells charcoal in the outdoor markets. Now he's found a home here at Florida Gulf Coast, and he hits 2 here. He can help get Florida Gulf Coast back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2013.
He's approaching becoming the first Florida Gulf Coast player to ever have 4 straight double-doubles, now 16 points, 5 rebounds, with a lot of time to add to his records on the season.
Angel Rivera. Cutoff finds Doyle. He's already hit a couple of threes tonight. Newton hasn't even taken one, and he gets fouled on the drive by Norelia. It's a second on the junior Norelia.
And a great play once again by Newton to drive the basketball and put pressure on Norelia to guard him on the perimeter to see if he can get him in foul trouble, because There's no question about the fact that Stetson can't guard Norelli on the block. So you have to make him work on the other end of the floor, and Newton does just that on this possession.
22 of Florida Gulf Coast 30 shots have been in the paint.
Is it fair to say that Derek Newton, the freshman, has been quiet now with only 11 points?
That's what happened when you set a school record for points by a freshman and you're the player or freshman of the year, I should say, in the conference. I mean, the guy takes a lot of shots. I mean, he went to the Corey Alexander School of Basketball. He averages 11 field goal attempts a game. He took 17 in the last matchup between these teams.
So the problem there is
no problem.
Okay.
But that's why it seems like it's quiet. He hasn't dominated the basketball tonight.
Okay.
And a foul on the drive on Leo Goodman. Speaking of odds, by the way, you were talking with North Florida head coach Matthew Driscoll today. He's a two-time Atlantic Sun Coach of the Year. If Stetson wins this game, he goes to the tournament. What did he tell you about those odds?
Well, he said, Corey, you have to refer to the great movie, the classic Dumb and Dumber, where he says, so you're saying I have a chance?
Their odds are better than 1 in a million, that's for sure, especially with Stetson up by 2. 14 and a half to go. Reed high off the window. Stripped down low by Rivera, and the loose ball will be tied up. Possession arrow will bring it this way.
Now, I'm not saying that there's not always this type of intensity in college basketball, but this is championship week. And when you see that many bodies on the floor, that shows you the importance of this game. And for Stetson, although they won't have an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament, this game is just as important to them as it is to Florida Gulf Coast.
Stetson's got all summer to rest up. And by the way, this is the third meeting of the season between the two teams. They split. Florida Gulf Coast won in a blowout in the first meeting. Stetson came from behind big time to beat him a week ago. Spin move comes up empty. Rebound by Norelia. Reggie Reed high steps his way into the front court. Terrell can shoot it. Little leaner goes.
Terrell's been much more aggressive here in the second half. I'm sure recognizing the fact that his teammate Julian Bowes is not on the floor has made him feel as though he had to step up his production, and he's done that, knocking down the 3 on the first possession of the second half, and continues to attack off the dribble, pulling up with a jumper.
Angel Rivera drives, and he manipulates it into the basket. He's got 6 now.
And speaking of attack, that's what all he does. Very tough-minded, hard-nosed player, and does a tremendous job getting into the paint, putting the pressure on the opposing team's defenses.
Reed left open. Angel Rivera, 5'8", 165. He looked comfortable in the lane last time. Handles here. He'll drive again on Reed, and he draws a foul. It came before the field goal attempt, much to the dismay of the Stetson bench.
Well, they wanted the and one. And when you look at Rivera, and you mentioned from Puerto Rico, reminds you a little bit of a guy playing in the NBA by the name of J.J. Barrera. A little so. Maybe not.
No, indeed. Indeed.
I mean,
I'm mesmerized by the clip. I thought you were talking to the entire audience, not just me. I'm with you.
I'm looking at you.
I'm watching the replay again. I'm impressed by his ball handling skills. Not impressed by that one as Goodman turns it over. And then look who's down on the floor once again.
And great sportsmanship to help up the big fella, but Rivera, extremely tough and going to be involved in every play. Once he comes into the game, he normally doesn't leave. Corey Williams very comfortable with Rivera running the show for this team and moving Miles over to the shooting guard.
They go under the screen and leave Johnson free.
And you can, by design, Johnson is open for a reason.
Rivera got hung up. Goodman. Stetson's playing with a lot of confidence right now. Is there such thing as too much confidence in a game like this?
Not at all. You have nothing to lose if you're Stetson. It's simply about going out and laying everything on the line. And think about who you're talking to. There's never too much confidence. How can that happen?
And Travius Simmons ties the game at 45.
And just like that, Coach Williams going to come back with the starting front court of Pegg and Newton.
A reach by Zach Johnson, his third, coming at the 12-minute mark. And as you said, here comes the starting front court for Stetson. Pegg and Newton have combined for 16 of Stetson's 45.
And Corey Williams recognizing that they're having a difficult time on the offensive end, so that's why he's getting those two guys back in the game. But it's very important for Brian Pegg to stay out of foul trouble. He does not want to pick up that fourth foul and have to watch the remainder of this second half until crunch time. He wants to stay on the court. He's going to have to be very smart playing against his front line of Florida Gulf Coast.
Miles draws the foul this time. It's a third on Reggie Reed. Foul trouble piling up for Florida Gulf Coast.
And Simmons continues to play very well on the post where the work has been done for Florida Gulf Coast.
We welcome you back to Fort Myers, Florida. Florida Gulf Coast and Stetson are tied at 45 as they battle for the Atlantic Sun Championship. Hardware to the winners and a chance to cut down the nets here. But Florida Gulf Coast will be the only one of these two teams with a chance to move to the NCAA tournament. Stetson is ineligible due to APR violations. So North Florida, the regular season champs, would earn the Atlantic Sun automatic bid. If Florida Gulf Coast wins this game, it'll be the second NCAA appearance in school history. Divine Miracle Miles at the free throw line for Stetson. It's a name that he has earned. When he was born, he was still in the amniotic sac, and they're about to dispose of him. But he kicked the bag open, became crying and screaming as a baby that was born after just 26 weeks in the womb. A miracle indeed, perfectly healthy. His mother pulled him out of special classes as a youngster, said, my kid can do anything any normal kid can do. And look at him now. He's got Stetson less than 12 minutes away from an Atlantic Sun tournament title.
And I love his approach. He feels as though he can do anything. And more importantly, I think he gives that inspiration to his teammates.
Another bucket inside for Simmons. We're tied again. Miles on the floor to try and find it. It'll belong to Florida Gulf Coast. Touched Miles when he was out of bounds. And Corey Williams not happy with his point guard being a little careless with the basketball.
Well, when you play the point guard position, the most difficult position for you to coach is the point guard. And you see Miles trying to throw the ball back in bounds, but his feet got in the way.
Yeah, threw it off his own shoe. Terrell. He wanted to pass it. Last resort was a shot, and he banks it in.
And so far, he's been the star of the second half for the Eagles. Extremely aggressive, attacking offensively, but he's got his hands full trying to guard Angel Rivera on the other end of the floor.
Yeah, there's a star since the half for Stetson. Great matchup between those two. Rivera chasing Terrell on one side. Terrell. No. And a foul over the back. The call against Phillips Fetitianen, his first.
And the fans here don't like it. However, good call. Fetitianen coming over the back. And as you see, Doyle attempting to block out. You see the left hand of Fetitianen push him in the back as he's going up into the air. And you Doyle on the free throw line with an opportunity to put Stetson back in the lead.
And so Luke Doyle goes to the stripe. Phillips Fetitianen is from Croatia. His dad Danko watching the game back in Croatia at this time. His dad had a tough task in the 1992 gold medal game playing for Croatia. His dad, Danko, was in charge of guarding, at least for a time, a guy by the name of Michael Jordan.
Well, and then, of course, when he wasn't guarding Jordan, he had to guard Pippen, or Mullen,
take your pick,
or Drexler, or any other Dream Team members. So it was going to be a tough task regardless. But I'm sure that's a great story he had the opportunity to tell his son.
And here's Stetson trying to get off a shot, can't do it. His dad played in 2 Olympics, 88 and 92. It is their own dream team, Yugoslavia in 88. Drazen Petrovic, Toni Kukoc, Vlade Divac. And a 3 the other way. Derek Newton drains it. And Stetson has opened up a 5-point lead.
And how about the response from the Hatters? A team that won 10 regular season games. Now with an opportunity to win an A-Sun championship behind their freshman of the year, Derek Newton, who gives his team a 5-point lead.
Well, Derek Newton picking it up for Stetson here in the second half.
Well, you talked about him going to the Corey Alexander basketball school, but one thing he didn't get from me was this efficiency. 4 for 6 on the field, 6 for 8 from the free throw line, and made his only 1 3-point field goal attempt. 15 points on only 6 field goal attempts. And the freshman of the year in the A-Sun, Derek Newton, has brought his game here in the championship game.
The Stetson team, which is ineligible for the NCAA tournament, but the future bright for Corey Williams' squad. Newton just a freshman. They don't have a single senior on this squad.
We talked with Corey Williams about that earlier today. And what type of motivation can he have this summer to be able to get his team playing at a level next year to be able to replicate what they've done here in the last part of the season?
Knocked out of bounds by Brian Pegg. It will stay with Florida Gulf Coast. 21 losses on the season for Stetson. 6-game losing streak late in the year. They're in each and every game. A half dozen heartbreaking losses, including one against Bethune-Cookman, where they fouled a 3-point shooter when they were up 4. He made the 3 and the free throw, and Stetson would go on to lose the game. What's the toughest thing in terms of learning how to win as an individual and as a team?
The toughest thing is honestly having leaders that are able to teach you how to do it. And it doesn't come from the sideline, it comes from within the locker room. But no one on this Stetson team really has had success in the green and white uniform as far as wins and losses. So to this point, they didn't have anyone to lead them, but they were able to find it collectively as a group against Florida Gulf Coast in that regular season finale, and that has just carried on for them throughout the Atlantic Sun tournament play.
The last foul was on Doyle, his 3rd. Big rebound ripped down by Newton. And while Stetson wants to be an up-tempo team, now holding onto a 5-point lead, you're not afraid to bleed the clock a little bit.
But one thing they can't do is get too passive and play the game safe. That's not who they are. That's not what they do. They have to continue to be aggressive on the offensive end.
Newton tried to force it into Pegg off of his hands, but right back as Miles finds it. Newton will fire from 3. Followed his own miss. Stetson tips it out, but into the hands of Rivera. Another opportunity for Stetson.
And that's where another advantage has been for Stetson. We mentioned earlier, Florida Gulf Coast is the top rebounding team in the Atlantic Sun. But Stetson has outboarded their teams the last 3 games, and they're doing the same thing to the Eagles right here on their home court.
Demetrius Morant back on the floor. He's playing with 4 personal fouls, posting up Pegg and holding him back. Morant, got to play careful and smart. Terrell will fire. Aurelia tracks it down. Johnson off the glass. Remember, Florida Gulf Coast playing without Julian DeBose, their starting 2-guard. The transfer from Rice turned his ankle late in the first half, doubtful to return. Brian Pegg able to go right past Moran, who lost his footing.
And great patience by Peg to stick with the move. The repost by Stetson. And as you see, Stetson defensively, they're going to dare Johnson to shoot the jump shot. He's best playing downhill, and Miles is going to give him as much space as he wants to shoot the jumper.
Peg challenged Johnson, and in the process picked up his 4th personal foul. One of the best players maybe leaving the floor. Under 7 to go here in the A-Sun Championship. Brian Peg and Stetson have a 5-point lead. A-Sun champs have made some noise in the big dance. Go back 2 years ago, Mercer no longer in the conference, knocked off 3-seed Duke in the first round. And the year before, Florida Gulf Coast beat both Georgetown and San Diego State, won them both by 10. No flukes there. Dunk City made it to the Sweet 16, the first 15 seed ever. Now the difference tonight, Stetson will not have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament this year, even with a win here in the title game.
But they will have an opportunity to hang a banner in the Edmunds Center in DeLand, Florida. And Corey Williams and his team would be extremely happy to be able to take that championship trophy back home. They've never won, Stetson has never won an A-Sun tournament championship despite 23 tournament appearances.
They've only played in the finals twice, the first in 1987 and then again in 94. Zach Johnson knocks them both down. It's a 3-possession game. Florida Gulf Coast showing a different kind of pressure here. Now they're back off. Newton wants to work on Terrell. They bring a double from Simmons. Shot like a 5. Rivera turned the corner and then took a bump from Reggie Reed, and that's the 4th personal on Reed. Problem for Florida Gulf Coast, they're lacking in backcourt depth with Julian DeBose out with his ankle injury. Reed's got 4. Zach Johnson, their starting point guard, has 3.
And Angel Rivera continues to put the pressure on them. Very heady player, knowing that they are in foul trouble. He continues to attack the rim.
So Angel Rivera's 76% free throw shooter at the line. He's got 2 coming. Tonight, after all the games wrap up, stick around for SportsCenter at night with John Bucci-Gross and Steve Levy in Denver. They'll have all the tournament game highlights as well as the rest of college hoops, the NBA, NHL, NASCAR, spring training, and the final round of the WGC Cadillac Championship at Doral. SportsCenter at night on ESPN and streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. There may be some Peyton news mixed in. Rivera hits both. He's got 10.
You mean Peyton Manning, the best quarterback of all time news?
I've heard you say that.
Okay, I was wondering.
Simmons got turned around. He's got 15 now, and it's a 3-point game again.
Florida Gulf Coast now starting to exert itself on the offensive glass. But the rebounding edge still is in favor of Stetson. And that's probably the biggest surprise of this game, the way that the Hatters have handled themselves on the board.
Stetson is one of the youngest and smallest teams in all of Division I college basketball. They have 21 losses to the name coming into this, but they've won 3 in a row, starting with a win a week ago against Florida Gulf Coast. Norelia got pushed away, able to swing it, and that one too strong for Zach Johnson. Missed opportunity for Florida Gulf Coast. Svetichinen will return as Reed takes a seat. Have you been impressed by Angel Rivera second half?
Absolutely. I've been impressed with them all game, and at this point now, I'm pretty much close to saying he's pound for pound the toughest dude in the country.
Wow. Hyperbole much?
Absolutely.
Rebounded by Christian Terrell.
I'm not ashamed to say it.
The lefty goes to his strong side. Took a shot, but no whistle. And Christian Terrell's got 11.
And speaking of impressive, I'm extremely impressed with what Terrell has done in the second half with his teammate Julian DeBose having to sit out. He has taken over on the offensive end for the Eagles.
A foul on the rebound will go against Kevin Nahiro. It's his second.
Christian Terrell, knowing that his team needed a spark, and he has been that guy in the second half, attacking the rim, knocking down the jumpers, and then taking it for the tough bucket.
Sixth second half foul on Stetson. Florida Gulf Coast looking for the lead. Terrell to Johnson. Drive, hang, hit, and Florida Gulf Coast is in front. Terrell will go to the line. Doyle commits his fourth.
And Stetson is daring Zach Johnson to shoot the jump shot, but he's not falling for the trick as he continues to attack the rim and finish to give the Eagles the lead.
3 minutes and 53 seconds left in the Atlantic Sun Championship. Eagles win, they go dancing. Stetson wins, and North Florida is in. Champ Week continues here in the Atlantic Sun title game with 3:53 to go, and Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2, the championship game of the Women's American Conference Tournament. Number 1 seed UConn and number 2 seed USF. The Women's AAC Championship, part of Champ Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods, streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Tom Hartwood, Corey Alexander, Christian Terrell at the free throw line for Florida Gulf Coast. And they're riding the momentum of this home crowd to claim the lead with under 4.
One of the great atmospheres in college basketball. Getting an opportunity to come here now for my second time. You look forward to being in this arena. It almost gives you chills how much these fans get into this game.
Stetson ice cold. They've missed 5 in a row. And Brian Pegg commits his 5th. He's done with 3:32 to go. Second team all-conference performer, and Stetson will have to go the rest of the way without him.
And after a 22-point, 12-rebound effort Thursday against Lipscomb, Pegg fouls out with 6 points. And as valuable as Brian Pegg is to this team, it's a scenario where he simply has to get out of the way and not try to contest that shot, because the result could be a foul. The block shot is the risk that you take, but you cannot put yourself in a position to get that foul and have to sit out the remaining 3.5 minutes of this game.
Zach Johnson, the redshirt freshman from Miami, did not play last year. Was not able to play. A heart-related injury. He wasn't even allowed to play pickup basketball. All he could do was shoot free throws, and he knocks a couple big ones down. Newton trying to take over, the only option for Stetson now.
And that was a huge basket for Newton. But a lot of the offensive responsibilities are going to lay on the freshman's shoulders at this point. With Pegg out of the game, Newton has to be ultra aggressive for the remaining 2 minutes, 50 seconds.
Johnson's going to the line for a three-point try.
And we talk about the freshman Newton, but we also have to mention Zach Johnson, a first-team All-Atlantic Sun freshman, and he is putting on a performance for the ages here as we draw closer to the conclusion of this game.
They've got a great history of guards here at Florida Gulf Coast. You've got to replace a couple legends. Red Comer, Bernard Thompson, 1 and 2 career points in school history. Newton fouled on the drive, and that's going to go against Demetrius Morant. That's his 5th. How smart is Christian Terrell? He was trying to tell the official, give it to me. I had it. It was mine. Instead, Morant fouls out.
It was a great attempt. As Norelia gets the student section back in the game, he's done everything else for the Eagles here tonight. He may as well be a cheerleader as well. Speaking to the student section to get them on their feet to see if they can throw off the free throw by Derek Newton.
The Dirty Birds do their job. 5-point lead for Florida Gulf Coast. 2.5 minutes from returning to the NCAA tournament. And Stetson comes up with a takeaway. Lozoya, got it! Big 3 for a shooter had been ice cold. That's his 2nd 3 only in the last 4 games. And he's made it a 2-point game with 2:16 to go. Sophomore Grant Lozoya hits a big shot here for Stetson.
And Lozoya has struggled shooting the basketball, but when his team needed him most, he steps up and knocks down a huge three-pointer to make it a 2-point game with just over 2 minutes remaining in the Atlantic Sun Championship.
Lozoya hit 53 threes last year as a freshman, only 26 this season. 5th 3 of the night for the Hatters. 2-point game. Johnson follows his own miss. Leo Goodman throws one in. It's a 1-point game again.
How about the response from the Hatters here in enemy territory? They have not backed down from the Eagles at all.
Zach Johnson will go to the line one more time. Derek Newton's 2nd personal foul.
After a huge 3 before the timeout, and now it's Leo Goodman stepping up, knocking down the big 3 to make it a 1-point game for the Hatters. And this is a team that we talked about did not know how to win, but they're making winning plays on the offensive end of the floor. They've struggled defensively all season long, and right now having a very difficult time stopping Zach Johnson from getting to the rim. But they get the basketball back after this free throw with an opportunity to tie or even possibly take a lead.
300 miles away in Jacksonville, North Florida, waiting with bated breath. If Stetson wins this game, the Ospreys are going to the tournament. And a foul on the rebound. Mark Eddie Norelia with his 3rd personal foul. Will be shooting free throws the other way with Derek Newton going back to the line. Joe Dooley trying to get to the NCAA tournament as a head coach for the first time. 11 years he was an assistant to Bill Self at Kansas, including the 2008 national championship. For Derek Newton, we're tied at 67.
We knew Newton was going to have to play a major part, especially on offense, for Stetson coming down the stretch. But he's gotten some help from some of his friends knocking down 3s in crunch time.
2 for 2, and Stetson back in front. Stetson ineligible for the NCAA tournament. They're playing for pride and the banner to go in the gym. Florida Gulf Coast is looking to continue its postseason life with a return to the NCAA tournament. Back cut Norelia, touch pass, Simmons, got it. Lazoya will pull, front rimmed it, and the loose ball saved by Stetson with a fresh 30, and it'll stay this way with the Hatters. 29 seconds on the shot clock, down by 1. It was a stagnant offensive set, and Stetson bailed out with the long offensive rebound.
And that's a great timeout by Corey Williams to get his team settled and get exactly what they need at 44.3 seconds left. Get his team organized for exactly what they want to execute on the offensive end.
We've had 6 lead changes. We've been tied 13 times. Here are the postseason scenarios. If Stetson wins, North Florida, the regular season champ, will earn the Atlantic Sun automatic bid. If Florida Gulf Coast wins, they'll be making their second NCAA tournament appearance in school history after running to the Sweet 16 in 2013. 29 seconds on the clock, on the shot clock for Stetson. Who do you draw one up for coming out of this timeout?
Well, of course, you want to put the ball in the hands of your best player on the floor, Derek Newton, but it may not be for the shot because he will garner so much attention from the Florida Gulf Coast defense that may open up something for Goodman or Doyle, one of the shooters on the perimeter. But you also can't forget about the fact that you have 2 guys on the court in Rivera and Miles who get to the basket extremely well.
Stetson has hit 6 threes today. Trying to win on the road for just the 6th time all season. Doyle is a shooter. He's on the floor for Stetson. Newton has been the go-to guy in the second half. Their leading scorer was 16 a game. Doyle sets up opposite of the inbounder. Here's Newton. Drives. And he got a foul and will go back to the line with a chance to give Stetson the lead.
And I love the poise that the freshman is playing with right now. He did not get sped up, didn't rush a three-pointer as the shot clock was going down. Does the right thing, putting the pressure on Florida Gulf Coast defense and taking the ball to the basket, forcing them to foul.
Stetson will pull everybody off the free throw line. Would you have anybody on the line here? You're down 1.
Not necessarily, because you want to make sure that your defense is set. You trust your freshman to make the free throw to tie this basketball game.
He does. 25 seconds left.
And this is where the struggle's been for Stetson all year long. At the most crucial time, can you come up with one stop?
Zach Johnson, the freshman from Miami, will start it. Johnson drives all the way in, blocked from behind, and with 6 seconds left, it'll be Florida Gulf Coast with a chance to set up a baseline out of bounds play. It was Leo Goodman who had the block.
Huge block by Goodman coming in, and now everyone wants the officials to go over and check to make sure that the basketball in under 2 minutes, they can look at the video and look at the replay and see exactly who that basketball goes to. And that may be changed as the official goes down. The ball was blocked by Goodman, but you can see the hand. You can see the hand of Johnson possibly touch that basketball last, slamming it to the ground, going out of bounds. And if the officials review, that's what they're reviewing and look at, that basketball could be going back to Stetson.
John Hampton, the referee, on the headset with our truck right now. Johnson's hands on it, and maybe even his leg as he took it to the floor. The officials tell our truck that they're looking at the clock. Brian Hampton, when he's looking at the clock, can't help but notice that went off Zach Johnson.
Well, under 2 minutes, you can review that. So it's a reviewable play at this point. Even if they are looking at the clock, they can still go over and see that and then switch to possession on that play because the ball went off of Johnson going to the ground.
Well, as much time as John Hampton is taking, trying to make sure they get this thing right on instant replay. There's the block.
At that point, the basketball still touches Johnson's hands last. His momentum takes it to the floor. That should be Stetson basketball.
All right, clarification from the officials. They were indeed looking at who the ball went off of, and they're going to have Vladimir Voyartadov get a look at it too. So they want to make sure that multiple officials take a look at this replay. 6.2 seconds. Either Florida Gulf Coast will be setting up a baseline out of bounds play with a chance to win this game and go to the NCAA tournament, or the ball will be turned over to Stetson with a chance to win with 6 seconds left. And the guys at North Florida would be a bucket away from going to the NCAA tournament.
And with so much on the line, you would encourage officials to take as much time as they need. But when you look at this play and you see the block at this point, now Goodman's hand is off of it. All the momentum of the basketball follows Johnson to the floor. I see, from what I see, you have to reverse that and give the basketball back to Stetson.
It is indeed Stetson basketball. What does Stetson have with 6 seconds to go?
Well, they still have one timeout left, and if I'm Corey Williams, I want to advance the basketball as fast as you can, get it across half court, then call a timeout, and in turn, you set up your play in the half-court situation, not focus on getting something in the from full-court possession.
They get it into Miles. A burst up court, and he's stripped of it. Zach Johnson lost it. 1/10 of a second left on the clock, but they can obviously add more time if they go back to the monitor.
But that's why, in my opinion, you take the timeout. Great job by Stetson getting the ball, going downhill, but if you call that timeout at the 28-foot mark, now Corey Williams has an opportunity to be able to get his team organized. But great hands, great job defensively by Johnson right there, stripping the basketball away from Miles.
They're not going to take another look. 1/10 of a second. Time for a tip. And Newton will hold it, and we'll go to overtime. Well, the ratings in Jacksonville should be great for an overtime period.
Well, this has been fun. I wanted to spend extra time with you, my man. I love hanging out with you so much. I asked these guys to give us at least 5 extra minutes to play this thing out.
Crockett and Tubbs take on Florida. Stetson and Florida Gulf Coast tied at 69. To recap, Stetson is ineligible for the NCAA tournament. They came into this tournament as the 7th seed out of 8 teams. Pair of upsets to get here, a win today, and they win their first ever A-Sun tournament, but they'll be going home tomorrow regardless. A Florida Gulf Coast win, and the Eagles will be headed back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 3 years. Stetson wins. North Florida, the regular season champs, would earn the automatic bid from the Atlantic Sun.
And both teams playing without their main cog in the middle. Brian Pegg fouled out. Demetrius Morant fouled out, so now it's a smaller group on both sides of the floor. More skilled guys in there, less big guys in there. Angel Rivera not in the game on the last couple possessions for Stetson. Will be interesting to see if he's on the court to start the overtime period.
Tom Hart with Corey Alexander, 5 minutes to go as we start our first overtime period. These two teams split the regular season series. Florida Gulf Coast won big here at home. Stetson knocked them off a week ago. Survive and advance. Jim Valvano's story at North Carolina State coming up next. One of the assistants on his staff, Tom Abetamarco, is now an assistant at Florida Gulf Coast. Abetamarco part of that postseason run, the miracle run for North Carolina State.
And Abetamarco has worked with not just a couple of the greats, but many of the greats.
Oh, he was an
Valvano, Lefty Giselle. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Rick Majerus. There he is. to the left of the head coach, Joe Dooley.
41 years in the game. He told me before the game, he said, I've been around the block a few times.
Both of those guys have national championships as assistants. Dooley to Bill Self and Abeta Marco to Jimmy V. Doyle playing with foul trouble. Simmons walked with it. Doyle, dangerous, was in position to take the charge anyway, but it's simply a turnover as they got it to the big guy on the run.
And a forced shot by Doyle on the offensive end, but does a great job getting back defensively and regaining possession for his team. Stepping in and him just presenting the thought of a charge to Simmons caused Simmons to travel and get the ball back in the hands of the Hatters.
Kevin Mickle, the sophomore from Brooklyn, will re-enter for Florida Gulf Coast.
Both these teams now, coaches will go with offensive, defensive lineups whenever they have opportunities on dead balls to make sure they've got the right personnel on the floor for each possession.
Looking for Newton. Miles with a head and shoulder fake. Gets a trip to the line after the foul by Mickle. It's a third on Kevin Mickle. And so Divine Miracle Miles to the free throw line. Stetson forced overtime when Derek Newton hit 1 of 2 free throws towards the end of regulation. Derek Newton with 20 points tonight for Stetson.
And Divine Miles, the second leading scorer for Stetson, hasn't had a huge game on the offensive end of the floor. But this is the time that you rely on your guards to be able to carry you home, especially for Corey Williams. And Rivera not in the game because he's choosing to play the 2 shooters alongside Miles.
Christian Terrell caught fire late. Simmons all alone. And Travius Simmons has 19, a new career high for the big fella. Newton to the left. Terrell left it short. Derek Newton running through the stop sign. Gives it right back. And Johnson fouled hard by Grant Lazoya. It's a third on Lazoya, and will put Zach Johnson to the free throw line. So Zach Johnson shooting 2.
Well, back and forth action. And Zach Johnson doing what he does best. Getting his shoulders downhill, attacking the rim. Lazoya with a good foul, sending to the free throw line to make him earn it at the stripe in comparison to giving him a layup.
Stay tuned. Sports Center's coming up next. Wild, crazy day in college basketball. There was a buzzer beater at Arch Madness in St. Louis, Northern Illinois, going back to the dance for the 2nd consecutive season. Freshman Zach Johnson here.
You mentioned Northern Illinois. They are the first bid thief.
Pardon me, Northern Iowa. Excuse me.
Northern Iowa, you're right. The first bid thief this year, because Wichita State most likely will get an at-large bid, meaning that they have stolen a bid from one of the teams that would have gotten an at-large bid had Wichita State won the conference tournament.
They brought the double on Newton. Miles held out front by Mark Eddie Norelia. If that's on Norelia, that's his 5th. And he's done. So both post players, Mark Eddie Norelia and Demetrius Morant, have fouled out of this game for Florida Gulf Coast. 25 points combined between the two. And that early success for Florida Gulf Coast was simple, piling it into the post.
And that's one of the byproducts of switching the pick and rolls Miles doing a very good job of attacking the rim and making Norelia have to guard him. And with the NCAA directives on this year, you put your hands on the player, it's going to be a foul.
Devon Miles for the top. Johnson has been aggressive late for Florida Gulf Coast. Foul on the rebound. It'll be on Miles, his first. And Travius Simmons will go to the free throw line. The third-year sophomore out of South Miami High School, who left Florida to go to VCU to play for Shaka Smart. Transferred back to the state here at Florida Gulf Coast. Simmons makes one of two. Nickel will replace him defensively. And Florida Gulf Coast has a 2-point lead with 2:48 to go. Working on Johnson, freshman on freshman. Strong move, but too strong. And a late whistle. Zach Johnson picks up his fourth.
It may have been late, but it was the right call. As you see Newton backing down, and watch the hand of Johnson as it hits the right elbow of Newton as he's going up for the shot. Better late than never.
Moran is fouled out. Norelia is out. Reed and Johnson each have 4 personal fouls. And Derek Newton, who tied this game with a free throw with 25 seconds to go, goes right back to the line.
And it's been all free throws here in overtime. Very few field goals made. Both teams having to get to the free throw stripe, the charity stripe, and try to finish this game.
Newton ties it again. We've been tied 16 times. We've had 8 lead changes. Championship on the line for Stetson. Pegg is fouled out. Doyle has 4. A trip to the NCAA tournament available to Florida Gulf Coast if they can pull out the win. And the Eagles will take a timeout. 2 remaining for both sides. What does Joe Dooley want to draw up in this huddle?
Well, he wants to be able to get Zach Johnson going downhill. That has been the successful part of their offense here in the second half. And now with Norelia fouled out of the game and on the bench where the interior presence has been so strong, they still have Simmons as well on the offensive glass when Johnson's unable to score. So you want to make sure you're attacking the rim, especially in a tie basketball game. You don't want to depend on jump shots at this point for Joe Dooley.
NCAA tournament already becoming populated. Yale is in. The Governors of Austin Peay will be going for the 7th time. Northern Iowa out of the Valley, and UNC Asheville. We could have a ticket punch from 300 miles away. If Stetson wins this one, the regular season champs, University of North Florida will be going back for the 2nd time in school history.
I really like that decision by the ASUN conference, simply because they're going to make Florida Gulf Coast earn it if they're going to get to the tournament.
Kevin Nahiro with a shove in the back commits his 3rd. It was a decision actually made a couple of years ago when Northern Kentucky entered the league. They weren't eligible for the postseason NCAA tournament, still transitioning, but the league wanted to make sure that Northern Kentucky could play in the conference tournament. It applies to any team ineligible for the postseason NCAA tournament. They can still play for a conference title.
And it makes winning that conference title, the regular season conference title, that much more important. And the Atlantic Sun came down to the last week where North Florida had to go get a big win to secure the regular season championship. So therefore, it wasn't like they didn't earn their rights if Stetson is able to win this game.
There's a lot of shuffling going on in the last week in the A-Sun as Antravius Simmons puts him ahead by 1 with 2:10 to go, and he'll rest for another possession. Chairs currently not being used in this building. Doyle drives. Nothing doing. Stetson will bring it back out.
No rush if you're Florida Gulf Coast.
Terrell for 3. And Mickles on the glass. Empty possession, Florida Gulf Coast. 3 ball.
And you like that look. If you're Corey Williams and you're Stetson, you've got one of your better shooters taking a shot that is his shot. But right now, if you're Florida Gulf Coast, no reason to be in a rush with a 1-point lead on your offensive end. Make sure you get a quality shot.
Terrell, the lefty, spins in. They're going to count it. A chance for a 3-point play. And the foul on Lozoya.
And Terrell, along with Johnson, have been the heroes here in the second half for Florida Gulf Coast. And no shot bigger than that one by Christian Terrell as he goes to the line with an opportunity to give his team a 2-possession lead.
13 of his 15 points have come in the second half in overtime. Still a 3-point lead. Stetson has hit 6 threes tonight. Miles hunting for a 2. Lozoya. Ah, he hits! We're trading buckets now as Lozoya will get a chance for a 3-point play to tie it.
How about the toughness of Lozoya? Struggled early, but stuck with it, and now has made a number of huge baskets for the Hatters, and now at the free throw line with an opportunity to tie this with just a tick over 43 seconds remaining.
Swap again. Simmons returns for Joe Dooley's squad as Mickle takes a seat. Grant Lozoya, sophomore from Westlake Village, California, with a chance to tie the game. His first free throw attempt of the night. It was halfway down. Do they want to go to Simmons or Johnson?
I'm going with Terrell. Honestly, if I'm putting the ball in the hands of Terrell, he's carried us thus far. I want to make sure he has a say in the end of this game.
Johnson makes the move. Spins in. Left hand. Banks it in! 3-point lead. Miles will drive. And it goes for Stetson.
And that's a beautiful play by Miles, and Corey Williams not happy about the fact with all that contact, Miles is not at the free throw line with an opportunity to tie the game once again.
Here's how Florida Gulf Coast extended the lead.
And a beautiful play by Zach Johnson getting to the rim, shielding the basketball and using his left hand to finish. But Devon Miles back to the rim. A little contact, no foul. And Stetson trails by 1.
Here's how it breaks down. 1-point game. Already UNC Asheville, Northern Iowa, Austin Peay, and Yale have punched their tickets for the 2016 NCAA tournament. A Stetson win would put North Florida in. A Florida Gulf Coast victory would put the Eagles back in the tournament for just the second time ever.
Right now, if you're Corey Williams and you're Stetson, you want to allow the basketball to come in and see if you can get a trap and a turnover, but you can't waste a lot of time. If you can't get a turnover early, you've got to foul and put the Eagles on the free throw line to be able to extend the game and get the basketball back on your offensive end.
Possession arrow belongs to Florida Gulf Coast. Into Johnson, quick foul Miles, 9.2 remaining. And that'll put Zach Johnson, the freshman from Miami, to the free throw line. He's 6 of 9 from the stripe tonight. Just a moment ago, Luke Doyle asked his coach, Corey Williams, do you want a timeout? He said, no, we're going. Remember, they didn't use a timeout towards the end of regulation. Two shots for Johnson. You like that idea that Stetson would just go?
At this point now, with the most damage that can be done is a 2-point lead, I want to get the ball across half court and then call the timeout.
Well, they'll use the timeout here. And so if that's your line of thinking for Corey Williams, you're not going to use it after the free throw anyway. Use it now and set it up because Stetson doesn't have any left.
Well, Corey Williams choosing because he wants to get his team with a full court run. And I can understand that thought process. It's the same thing, but right now he's designing what he wants to happen now, knowing that the most that he'll need is a 2. He doesn't have to force a 3 to get the ball into the hands of the person that he wants to take this final shot with 9.2 seconds remaining in this game.
We've seen the speed of Divine Miles. 9.2 seconds is plenty of time for him to go 94 feet.
Absolutely, and more than enough time for him to put the pressure on the defense and possibly draw in the defenders for Florida Gulf Coast and kick to one of the many shooters that he has on the outside.
Johnson puts it in. It's a 2-point lead, and now Joe Dooley uses a timeout. 19 points for Zach Johnson, 17 of them in the second half and overtime.
And I really like that timeout by Joe Dooley in order to see if you want to actually trap the basketball or do something different and give Stetson a different look once the ball comes inbounds to try to get the ball out of their ball handler's hands and make someone else that's not as comfortable in this position have to make a play.
Well, here's how we got to this point in overtime with 9.2 seconds remaining. Florida Gulf Coast able to get it inside to Travius Simmons. Christian Terrell with a huge spinning shot was able to go to the free throw line, and Zach Johnson with a big one there. And he just made a free throw to put him up 2. You go 2 or 3 here if you're Stetson.
You go with the best available look you get. If you get a run to the rim and you have an opportunity to send the game to double overtime, you do it. But if there's a wide open 3, you're on the road, you take a look at it.
Divine Miles gets all the way in the paint, has it rejected. Florida Gulf Coast is going to win it with a defensive stop. The Eagles are going back to the big dance. This game had everything, including defense.
Well, defense has been the calling card for Joe Dooley's team this year, and it was the biggest play of the year. Zach Johnson coming up with a huge block shot to end the game and to send the Eagles dancing in the NCAA tournament.
The Eagles soar back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since their Sweet 16 run of 3 years ago. In overtime, Florida Gulf Coast 80, Stetson 78. Is it mad enough? March Madness is here. We'll be back to chat with Zach Johnson after this. But for now, we send you to SportsCenter.